Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Our guest today is my good friend, Professor of Chemistry at Cornell University, Dave Collum. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, good to see you again. Well, it was about 2 weeks ago where I was on. So
Yeah, we had you on 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the economy. You even joked about silver, about silver.
going down.
Yeah, silver about going down, but now it's going up. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about precious metals, everything that's happening in the world, the markets. We'll start off with gold and silver. There's so many geopolitical tensions that's happening in the world, Dave. Where do you see silver and gold going, and what are the signs? What are the telling signs?
I'm not sure gold and silver respond to the tensions, although once in a while there's a spikiness to it because someone announces World War III is going to start tomorrow, that sort of thing. But um, in general, if you think there's going to be a thermonuclear war and there's a big sell-off in the markets and a spike in gold, you should short the gold and buy the markets because if there's World War III, it's not going to matter anyways.
Yeah, everyone will be gone.
Right, right. So bet against World War III. That's the way to go. I by the way, watched something the other day. I'll draw attention to your listeners. On YouTube, Russell Napier, who's one of these really huge brain guys, had 21 rules that he follows, and some of them were very interesting. And one of them was follow the supply, not the demand.
Right.
Or follow the supply as much. And he says the reason it's hard is because it's a bitch to figure out supply. You have to know what the miners are doing, this like that, and the demand just go, rushes by it, and then you're done,
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
Just
The demand will come and go. Even now, like you're seeing central banks buying gold at record paces, but you have to look at the supply because if the supply cuts out, then yeah, you're right.
right. So I own platinum miners. Two pearls of wisdom on those. One is one of Russell's words of wisdom was basically stay away from unstable countries. I go, my platinum miners are in South Africa. And the other thing was is if you think the price of platinum's going up, Einhorn said don't buy indirectly. You think the price of platinum's going up, don't buy the miners, buy platinum.
Buy platinum itself.
Yeah, or anything you think is going to go up. Don't get degrees of freedom away from the idea. So if you think oil's going up, don't get all cute and say, well, therefore these things will go up. You go, no, just buy oil.
Yeah, yeah, just that makes more sense too because at the end of the day, if the supply is gone from that mine or whatever happens to that
Right.
mine, gold prices will still go up. But yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense.
So I might flip my platinum miners over to platinum metal. I don't have that much anyways. I had more when I bought them.
Why are you buying platinum right now? Why are you not buying silver or gold?
Platinum's the forgotten metal,
Right,
and I'm
yeah,
not buying it right now. I bought some miners; they were absolutely dirt cheap looking to me,
right.
and the only thing that troubled me was geopolitical risk, and unfortunately, that's starting to come to fruition. Right,
Yeah,
South Africa is
Africa.
starting to look like a failed state to me. South Africa
Yeah.
starting to look like a failed state to me a little bit, and so I may have made a mistake on that. So I'm tempted to, if I believe platinum is being underpriced, just buy the platinum, not the miners.
Where would be a safer jurisdiction other than South Africa where you're at if you are going to look at platinum?
Russia.
Really? Seriously? No way.
That's not safer. I think I'd avoid the miners.
Yeah.
Miners are they don't know how to make money at anything, right? I can no guys know how to make money mining, mine iron and Rio Tinto, things like that. Gold miners always seem to be promising to make money, and they never seem to get there. There's some that seem to be making money, but they'll break my heart at some point. They'll
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, I wanted to talk to you about everyone has been talking recently, Dave, online about you see for the past year we've been waiting for rate cuts, rate cuts, rate cuts. But now the Fed is giving some signaling that inflation is still high and inflation is still sticky, and of course, government inflation is underreported, so it could be a lot higher than well, it is a lot higher than what they report. So what do you think the Fed will do, Dave? Do you think they'll raise rates, lower rates? Does it matter? What happens?
uh I think it matters both directions. I think both have the same effect. How's that? Is that how's that for really straddling the line? If they raise rates, the traders will go bananas
Yeah.
and the markets will have some trouble. if they lower rates, it turns out that if you look at the history of rate cycles, usually from the point they start lowering rates, the market does a serious swan dive from that point.
If they lower rates or
if
raise
they
rates.
lower the rates, yeah,
Right.
yeah. When they go to real rate lowering, the market usually doesn't bottom for a year and a half after that.
Oh, really?
So the tell, yeah, if the tell really is when they start lowering rates, it means they're smelling a real problem.
Yeah.
But the markets haven't picked up on the problem yet. So they'll lower rates, lower rates, lower rates. Then when they're finally done lowering the rates, the market bottoms. So
Ah,
the Fed seems to be top and bottom calling pretty well in their rate cycles, in my opinion. But it's the reverse of what people often think. But if you go back and look at all the rate cycles and look at the markets, and when they start cutting rates, it means there's trouble.
yeah. And a lot of people think that if they start cutting rates, that silver and gold is going to skyrocket specifically. Maybe not right away, but that's been the main idea for the past 2, 3 years, especially in Wall Street Silver. We think if the rate's going to cut, silver and gold specifically are going to go up. Is that necessarily true, or could they also
No.
bottom?
Well, so what happened in the 70s? Rates went up monotonically for a decade,
Right.
and gold and silver went up monotonically for a decade. Right. So,
Mm.
to the extent that both are following what's called a lurking variable, meaning they're correlated with a variable you're not looking at, that's inflation. Um, then if inflation really takes off, then gold ought to go up, right?
Yeah.
And if inflation really takes off, then rates ought to go up, right?
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
the rates and the gold ought to correlate. Now, they on short time scales, they seem to correlate inversely because you've got a bunch of 22-year-olds in cubicles who are trading it the other way.
Right.
So
And what do you see happening with oil prices? Like with the geopolitical, I was talking to Mike McGlone from Bloomberg Intelligence last week, and he said he sees oil prices going down and gold hitting 3,000 by either the end of the year or a little bit further. He's still because he says central banks are buying so much gold right now that they see something we don't. Do you agree with that or
I have I have a concern that everyone says the same stuff.
right?
One time I was talking to a friend named Tony Deaton. Some know him, some don't.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me a story about how he tried to get 60 million ounces of gold out of GLD. And I'd read the prospectus, and what I was thinking is they never promised they would give you the gold. But he
Right.
said he got a team of lawyers, tried to get the $60 million worth of gold out, and he couldn't do it. And so I think I told Grant Williams that story. And then Grant told a friend. And then next thing I know, I'm reading about it all over the internet. And then I go, I'm the source of that story. So I got back to Tony. I said, Tony, did you tell me that you tried and it failed? And he said, yeah. He said, I wrote about it about 5, 6 years ago. And he sent me
Right.
the link, but no one paid attention. And
Ah,
and and so then I'm sitting going, okay, so we've got an organic chemist in Ithaca who is causing the headlines in the gold market. So that's insane, right? That's
yeah,
completely insane.
that's
So
insane.
what it tells me is when someone says gold's going to go to 3,000, where's the source of that? Everyone says that. It could come from some guy who's pounding on his keyboard in a trailer park in
Oh yeah,
Arkansas,
yeah,
for
yeah.
all
That
we
makes
know.
sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. You're always
So
gonna
I
get,
don't know. I
yeah,
don't know
yeah,
what to believe.
yeah, yeah. That totally makes sense. Now, a lot of people have been talking about recently, like with everything that's happening in the U.S. You see crazy protests. Where do you stand with that, Dave? What do you think America is slowly falling apart culturally?
Yeah, for 200 straight years. I, this there's analogies. This could be essentially the equivalent of the 60s. So I went to a GAD-SAD seminar, and afterwards I talked to him, and he had talked about how awful the Cornell campus looked to him, all the wokey crap and stuff going
Right.
on. And I thought about it, and then I said to him, if you were a World War II veteran flavored era graduate from Cornell and you showed up at Cornell 20 some odd years later and it was the late 60s, it would look like all hell was falling apart too.
Really?
And
Why? What happened in the
well,
60s
oh, that was
exactly?
late '60s. They took over one of our student unions with armed with rifles, and
Really? At
it was a
Cornell?
oh yeah, yeah, at
No
Cornell. Oh,
way.
it's one of the most famous building takeovers in history. There's pictures.
Really?
Google Cornell Willard Straight takeover, and you'll see a bunch of black guys who look like they take you out at the kneecaps with guns and ammo all
No
over them.
way. Wow.
Yeah. That was a famous thing. Lost a lot of donations from alums on that one probably, but campuses do that. They have a tendency to lose their shit occasionally, and so what's stunning me about this, and I have a personal gag order on the who's right and who's wrong in Israel Palestine conflict. I know I have various opinions about it, but I tend to keep them to myself.
Right.
Um, what I can tell you though is that it looks dangerous. And the other thing I'm a little stunned by is, 6 months ago, I think being anti-Semitic would have been toxic, and now all the left-wing cool kids are doing it. And
Yeah, yeah, it don't
it's
make
rather
sense.
it's rather staggering how quickly people went. I have no trouble with someone who wants to bitch about the government of Israel because I'll bitch about any. You give me a government,
Yeah,
I'll bitch
yeah.
about it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
absolutely.
but 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 some Jewish kid going to class is not Israel.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also know the emotions are running very high and stuff like that. But the other thing is Cornell's very quiet.
Really?
And yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, part of it's
Hopefully it
because we're in the
stays that.
middle. Well, we're in the middle of nowhere, right? So there's, I think Columbia and Yale and these places are getting non-student participation. I think it's probably well-funded
Right.
participation. I think there's probably professional organizers involved, and I think it's just too out in the middle of nowhere. I don't think we warrant the attention.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
it's
our protesters are sitting in the quad, 50 or 60 of them, holding hands and sing kumbaya or whatever. They're very, very tame.
yeah, no, it's a very interesting time right now in history. You're seeing so many things that are popping up, the economy, the markets. It's going to be interesting from now to the end of 2024. But Dave, I just wanted to thank
Yeah,
you so
interesting's a euphemism for total disaster.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
there's for sure more chaos coming. I just want to see
yeah,
what happens next. And there's
right.
even talks in CNBC and a lot of reporters talking this week about bank collapses, hundreds of regional bank collapses that the Fed is worried about. But do you think the Fed will just gobble them up?
Um, I don't know. I think that unlike 0809, where I think they created more money than even the Federal Reserve could imagine at the start. So,
Hmm.
so I've never run into anyone who saw $30 trillion coming from central banks. Um, I do not believe they can do that again. I think they're much more boxed in by inflationary pressures and stuff like that. And so
Hmm.
I don't think that solution will work this time. Um, and so if they start gobbling up banks, there could be a revolt somewhere. The system's very complicated. It's an emergent system. So you pull on one end and something way on the other end of the story can start to break. If
Yeah.
you'd told me like last spring when the banks started failing, if you had said a year ago, um, banks are going to fail because they own too many treasuries, I would have said, how is owning when is owning treasury systemically risky? Now I know how they failed by owning too many treasuries, but it shows you the absurdity of our banking system,
Yeah, yeah. It's very
right? A
absurd.
bank should be able to buy treasuries and say, okay, we're safe, right?
Not
and
anymore.
and then they say, and then the experts, right, the guys who are taking a cue from an organic chemist tweeting somewhere, say, well, they failed to hedge. I go, who is going to take the other side of that hedge?
Hmm.
Someone has to eat it, right?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Someone has
And
to.
then there's this unfunded liability story which is surfaced after decades. Okay, so Larry Kotlikoff wrote about 200 trillion unfunded liabilities. Those are liabilities. Those are promises made which, if you project all the revenues you can possibly imagine, you still don't know how to pay for, right? That's 1.4 million per household.
Wow.
Now, the Cassandras will say, oh well, but they'll just inflate it away. I go, okay, so instead of you having to pay 1.4 trillion, they will destroy your earnings power by 1.4 trillion. How is that any better?
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's actually worse. I'd
Yeah.
rather see the tax ban coming than the inflation bogey coming, right?
Yeah, no.
And one way or the other, we have to pay this back. We do have to pay this back.
Yeah.
Now, it might be we never have to zero out the thing. In fact, I'm confident we don't,
Hmm.
but it's growing. It's growing very quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's pretty scary what's going to happen pretty soon, especially with all the markets and Dave, it's such a huge pleasure having you come to Wall Street Silver. Every time you come, it's a breath of fresh air. But
Darkness.
where darkness. Where can people connect with you? Where can people get to you if you want them to connect with you?
Well, I'll be hiding in my basement. I don't. Twitter.
Twitter. I'll put your link in the
Really,
description.
really clever people, knowing that I'm a chemist at Cornell and they know my name, have been able to figure out my email.
Oh, geez.
It's a real challenge. Must have spent hours ferreting around the internet to find that. I try to answer them, but I'm getting too many. I'm getting an
Yeah.
awful lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have Bobby Kennedy's email address. I'm willing to bet that if I sent him an email, I would not hear back from
No,
him.
really?
Right. Well, I imagine he gets thousands and thousands a
Oh
day.
yeah, probably. Yeah.
So
Well, again, Dave, it's such a huge pleasure you coming down to Wall Street Silver. As the market develops, absolutely love to have you back.
thank you.